Buongiorno, come state? Cioè siete le anime vive voi, cioè sì. Rome Future Week è una bellissima giornata, un pomeriggio pazzesco di mutazioni. È un tema che quando il team di Rome Future Week mi ha presentato questo bellissimo pomeriggio ho detto no, devo capire meglio di quali mutazioni parliamo, biogenetiche, può darsi, umane, l'abbiamo visto, naturali, animali, tecnologiche, insomma di ogni ne vedremo oggi e cercheremo un po' di affrontare questa mutazione in corso che spesso ci spaventa, spesso ci fa pensare, ma che in realtà deve passare a un'azione. Rome Future Week e mutazioni in corso attraverso questo cambiamento di noi esseri umani, ma sta cambiando anche Rome Future Week, terzo anno, un'edizione incredibile. Fatemi fare un applauso a Rome Future Week, a tutti i ragazzi che organizzano questo evento e anche a Luis University Press che ci ha portato alcuni degli ospiti che ora conosceremo, 60.000 registrati agli eventi, 370 eventi complessivi, oltre 200 location coinvolte, veramente una Roma attivissima e presente. Tra l'altro volevo salutare anche Fabiana De Resta che ha diciamo così, utilizzato la sua abilità per creare tutti i video che avete visto, i template grafici molto molto belli, i video che vedrete anche oggi in questa giornata, insomma ce n'è veramente di ogni. Tra l'altro è una giornata che faremo qui all'interno dell'Acquario Romano, che tra l'altro è datato 1885, più o meno come il mio mulino d'acqua a casa. Ma pensate che qui nel 1885 non c'erano degli animali straordinari, immaginifici, artistici, ma c'erano proprio delle vasche, dei pesci, degli animali e quindi questo è un punto anche tra il passato e il presente e speriamo anche un ottimo futuro. Questa mutazione, questo cambiamento e poi fuori da qui, lo dicevamo prima anche con Eugenio, ci sono delle cose interessanti, c'è l'aperitivo, so che alcuni di voi sono interessato anche a quello, ma ci sarà anche il firmacopie, la possibilità di acquistare i libri dei nostri ospiti, è una scontistica speciale, ma anche chiaramente la possibilità di parlare con gli autori. Bene, allora io direi che abbiamo detto quasi tutto per rompere il ghiaccio e io partirei, sono contentissimo, l'ho conosciuto di persona oggi, è uno dei principali futuristi e strateghi della tecnologia e dell'assistenza sanitaria al mondo, è un personaggio incredibile, racconta la vita come se fosse una lingua. Il futuro biologico diventa linguaggio naturale e tra l'altro esce oggi, il 19 settembre, proprio qui, quindi è ufficialmente the first speech for the last book, il primo speech, il primo intervento per l'ultimo libro che esce dopo un bestseller pazzesco e quindi avete la possibilità anche di scambiare due chiacchiere con l'autore. Facciamo un grossissimo applauso a Jamie Meltz. Yep. Stage yours. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much to all of you for being here. I hope you all speak pretty good English. I'll try to go a little bit slow, but I loved that we started with an actor, because the story of technology is not the story of technology, it's the story of humans. And when we hear all of these people talking about the future of AI or saying that humans are the new Neanderthals or that we're entering a new era of AGI, artificial general intelligence, what I always say is none of that is true. We are entering a new era of human empowerment where we humans will be coexisting and co-evolving with our technologies. That is not the end of humans. If we get it right, this could be the very exciting beginning of a next chapter for humanity. And I'm particularly thrilled to be here in Rome, a city that has so much incredible history. And I always say that the future without the past is lost. If we are just racing into the future without a recognition of where we're coming from, that is very, very dangerous. And we had that here 100 years ago with the Italian futurists. There was the idea that we're starting a whole new chapter, and we know where that led. So really honored to be here with you talking about what I believe is the most important question for the future of our species, that is connected to this very unique moment in history. And this moment, in my mind, represents this incredible moment where after nearly 4 billion years of evolution, our one species suddenly has the increasing ability to engineer novel intelligence and re-engineer life. And the question that will determine a pretty significant portion of our future is whether we can learn to use these godlike superpowers wisely. If we do, we have an unlimited future. And if we don't, we could be ushering in very significant dangers that could cost us enormously. As was just said, today is actually the publication date for the Italian version of my new book, Superconvergence. It came out in English in hardback last year, and the revised paperback is coming out next month. But everything sounds better in Italian, so just really thrilled to be here with you today. But when I talk about these issues, these overlapping revolutions of AI, genetics, and biotechnology, it can feel very abstract to many people, myself included. So I'd like to introduce you to, for the start of my talk, is my late father. A really wonderful person who passed away 6 months ago. And my father came to the United States as a refugee when he was 13 years old, was resettled to the city where I grew up in Kansas City. He became a pediatrician in the community, and he practiced for more than half a century. And he became an absolutely fanatical sports fan, and particularly with the Kansas City football. And by football, we of course mean American football team, the Kansas City Chiefs. And so my father was a very, very important person in my life. And this is my father 3.5 years ago, when after he had his diagnosis for stage 4 metastatic neuroendocrine cancer. And we were told that he had 1 year to live based on that diagnosis. And as a dutiful son, I went to my father and I said, "You've had this wonderful life, you have 4 kids, you have grandchildren. Some people in your position would say, I don't want to be treated because I know cancer treatments can be very aggressive. And so I want to give you that option. But if you tell me that you would like to be treated, well, then I'm going to do everything I can to fight for you, and we're going to fight together." And so this was his response. This was his message delivered to the cancer. And I said, "All right, Dad, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do everything possible to make sure you are treated as if it's 10 years in the future, not 10 years in the past." And so the first thing that I did before we even had an oncologist, I went to our primary care doctor, our internist, and I said, what I want to do on day 1 is I want to sequence his cancer cells, fully genome sequence his cancer cells, and when we do the diagnostic biopsy, the biopsy to find out exactly the nature of the cancer that he has, I want to extract those cells in a way that they can be grown into cancer organoids, which are clusters of cells in a laboratory upon which different cancer treatments can be tested. And so the doctor had never before written either of these prescriptions. And so we did it. And then we had our oncologist, and the oncologist, again, it was a 1-year life expectancy, said, there's no way that you're going to be able to stop the spread of the cancer. The best that we can do is slow it, and what I recommend is a very aggressive form of IV chemotherapy. So very aggressive chemotherapy that only had a 30% chance of succeeding. When we got the information back from the genome sequencing, it turned out that my father had a mutation in his cancer cells that was almost unheard of in his type of cancer. Only 36 people in the entire medical literature with my dad's cancer had this mutation. But it was less uncommon in lung cancer. And so there was a treatment to block this mutation, which was what was signaling the cancer cells to grow, and had never really been used in my dad's kind of cancer. But I felt this is very targeted, and we know what we're going. It's like in the Star Wars movie where Luke Skywalker shoots that one phaser and it goes into that little hole. I said, let's try to treat this that way. So I had a long conversation with the oncologist, and we agreed to do it. And it was 4 months later, we were very nervous when the scans came back to see whether it had worked. And not only had we slowed the cancer, but my father was in such remission that actually we decided to reward him. And so my brother and I last year took our father to Las Vegas for the Super Bowl, where his team and our team, the Kansas City Chiefs, were in the Super Bowl. And this was our picture just after the Chiefs won the game in the extra time. And so the point is, technology isn't about technology. Technology is about unlocking human potential to love, to live our dreams, to do all of the things that we want to do. If we think technology is about technology, we will be missing the plot. And not only that, the oncologist who had recommended this IV chemotherapy was so thrilled with our progress that last year he published a case report in the Journal of GI Cancer recommending our approach, which was a totally new approach, now be a first-line approach for other people with my father's cancer and this specific mutation. And I have written a feature that's coming out called AARP, which is the largest physical circulation magazine in the world. It's coming out in December, about what patients and their families can do, because the medical system is very slow, but what patients and their families can do to make sure we're all getting treated like it's 10 years in the future and not 10 years in the past. So, that's funny, we're talking about technology future, but it's hard to make the clicker work. So how do we position ourselves? How do we position ourselves in this big change? Because every day we're all getting all new information about some story, and it seems really important, but the most important thing for now is to really have a framework for thinking about change. And so raise your hand if you have played around with ChatGPT or other LLM. Perfect. So most everybody. If you haven't done it, go home and do it today. And so when I talk to a lot of people and say, are you using AI? Most people will say, yes, I'm using AI, I'm using Gemini or DeepSeek or ChatGPT, and that is also technically true. But if I ask you, how did electricity influence your life today? You don't say, I went and I visited the power plant, because if you think about how electricity influenced your life today, it's in everything. It's in the alarm that woke you up. It's in the air conditioner that's kept you somewhat cool in the Roman heat. It's in your haircut. It's in your clothes. It's in this microphone. It's in the floor. Electricity is woven into everything. We don't go and do electricity. Electricity is. And that's the way to think about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is not ChatGPT, even though GPT-5 and all these other LLMs are examples of AI. I think of AI like electricity woven into everything. But we need to take a bigger step back to understand all of this in even a broader civilizational context. 100 years ago, there were 2 billion people living on Earth with a 15% literacy rate. So that means about 300 million people able to participate in the world of knowledge shared beyond their immediate communities. Today, we have 8 billion people, 85% literacy, so that's around 7 billion people who can share knowledge with each other globally. And because we are all connected to each other through our digital networks, none of us need to solve problems that have already been solved. That seems like a little thing, but remember learning about the Bronze Age and the Iron Age and the Copper Age, all of those ages, and they were thousands of years apart, or the dawn of agriculture, thousands of years apart in different civilizations. That means that for thousands of years, people who could have contributed their thoughts of what might be done with bronze or copper or iron or domesticated crops or any kind of thing like that weren't able to do so. So now, because of our connections, everybody gets to start every morning solving problems that have not yet been solved. So when you go to from those 300 million literate people just a century ago to 7 billion, and everybody working on new problems, you recognize that the story here is not technology, it's the unleashing of human imagination at scale. That's the revolution that we are experiencing now, with massive implications for so many things. But the technologies are obviously central to that story. The reason why the English version of my book is calling superconvergence is because all of these technologies are woven into each other. We had the agricultural revolution starting about 12,000 years ago, and those agricultural surpluses enabled the civilizational revolution, and the civilizational revolution made writing and numerical systems necessary just to keep track of these more complex societies. And if the team here just presses a couple of buttons and shows you the code that's underpinning what you're seeing here, what will you see? You'll see the ones and zeros of the computer code, and those are, of course, our Hindu Arabic numbers that are very ancient. And the computer languages, you'll see your own languages, which we call Latin languages. We're probably more accurately should call them Phoenician languages, but you get the point. These are these ancient languages that are woven into our computer codes. Our computer revolution makes the machine learning revolution possible, makes the AI revolution possible. And now with the tools of AI, we're able to interrogate living systems, like how a leaf diffuses, how a plant diffuses nutrients through a leaf, and looking at those evolved patterns, come up with new ways and very efficient models for new computer chip designs that are speeding everything up. So it's a flywheel where everything is influencing everything else, and that's why we're experiencing exponential change. It's a J-curve because revolution begets more revolution. Innovation begets more innovation. Unless we totally screw it up, which we're actually trying to do, we're going to see continuous, very rapid, and accelerating change. And this is just one example. I could give many, but just this one company, Google DeepMind, over the last 9 years. 9 years ago, the algorithm AlphaGo, which had trained on all of the digitized human games of Go, beat 4 games out of 5 the world grandmaster Lee Sedol in a Go competition in Seoul. The next year, AlphaZero, which didn't have access to any human digitized games of Go, was only given the rules of Go and a structure to play games against itself with a reward for success and with a reward for moves leading towards success and a penalty for moves leading towards a loss. So at the first moment, it was the worst Go player in history. It took 2 days with no exposure to human digitized games of Go to become the greatest Go player in history by beating AlphaGo. And the next year, DeepMind created and launched this program called AlphaFold, which was designed to crack one of the greatest challenges in all of biology, which is predicting the shapes of protein from sequenced strings of amino acids represented by letters. And being able to predict proteins has huge implications for our ability to develop new kinds of medicines, new industrial materials, and all sorts of things. So they entered a competition in 2018 and came 20th place. Then they used the same type of approach as with AlphaZero, a new accelerated learning model. In 2020, won this competition so handily that Nature magazine called the problem, quote unquote problem, of predicting the shapes of protein from strings of amino acids solved. The next year, they released 350,000 predictions of proteins, including all of the proteins in the human body. Prior to that point, to characterize a single protein, you had to sequence it, and then you had to crystallize the protein in a very small environment, and then bombard it with X-rays, and then use those X-ray images to decipher the shape. So that was the training set for this algorithm. It took about 3 years of some of the most talented people on Earth just to do one. There are 215 million proteins known to science, and so if you do that 215 million times 3, that means 645 million years is how long it would have taken for humans to characterize all of these proteins with massive implications for many different things that we do. So in 2022, Google DeepMind with the European Bioinformatics Institute released the predicted shapes of all 215 million proteins. And so that's, again, 645 million years. It's the same point as I made earlier in my remarks about bronze and iron. Now everybody who would have spent maybe their entire career characterizing proteins now spends their entire career thinking what to do with proteins that have already been characterized. And this isn't just about predicting the shapes of proteins, it's about the speed of change, and it's about how many problems do we have in our lives that are at this same level of complexity. And the answer is certainly a lot. Maybe some of you are familiar with this. It's an actual test called Humanity's Last Exam, and it's 300 of the most challenging questions in science and mathematics and other fields, and some of the world's top scholars have come together and said, well, this is going to be a test of the ability of our AIs. And so 5 years ago, the AI systems got about 2%. Right now, we're at 25%, but it's getting better and better. Again, this doesn't mean that humans are cooked, but it certainly means that within specific domains, our machine capabilities are certainly getting much better and much stronger. Maybe you have heard, it's the special word of this year, agentic AI. Raise your hand if you've heard the word agentic AI. You're all going to be hearing it. And so what agentic AI means is we are unleashing our AI systems to do actual things in the world. And so a very simple example would just be telling your AI algorithm to book you a weekend trip to Milan, and it would book your flights and hotels. But the bigger point, it's a level of agency for these systems, an ability to interact with the broader world. Maybe you've heard the word multimodal AI. And what multimodal means is that these AI systems are not just in screens, but they are learning to live in video environments, in 3D environments, in audio environments. And increasingly, what we are going to realize is that we are coexisting and co-evolving with these machines. Maybe some of you have thought in the past, oh, there's virtual life and there's real life. And that is an incorrect formulation. There is not virtual life on this side and real life. There is virtual life and physical life, and both of them are components of real life. Virtual life is real life. And if you want an example, a living example, just look at my country, where our country is being absolutely torn apart just by algorithms that are being manipulated perhaps by foreign actors, but that are driving people for attention. And so all of a sudden, the center has disappeared from American political life because everybody is being pushed to the extremes. This is very, very real because the ripples are fundamentally transforming our society. So where does the rubber hit the road for these technologies? In very real places. I talked about my father. So we're going to see, and we are seeing, transformations in healthcare. And the way I characterize that big picture is we're moving from our world of generalized healthcare based on population averages. The reason you can be in some other country and go into a quality hospital somewhere and get treated is they will treat you because you're a human, and we humans are very similar to each other in many ways. We're entering our new era of personalized or precision healthcare, where you're treated not because you're a human, but because you are you individually. So how do we know you're you? We need all kinds of information, including our sequenced whole genome. And I don't know if I have had my whole genome sequence, but we will all in the future have our whole genome sequence. But it's not just genetics, it's systems biology. It's genetics, epigenetics, metabolomics, proteomics, all this systems of system. And as we gather all of this data as part of our transition to precision healthcare, and we have larger and high quality data sets and stronger algorithms and more computing power, we're going to be able to see complex patterns in these vast pools of data. And that is going to jump our healthcare systems from, I said, generalized to precision. The next step is precision to predictive and preventive, because we're going to realize that we live within a range of biological possibility. And the goal is to optimize our experience at the upper edge of possibility, and then, when possible and appropriate, to go beyond that. We're having an insane debate in the United States about vaccines, but anybody who's vaccinated, and I certainly hope it's everybody, we are getting superpowers that are not innate. If you have a pacemaker or cochlear implants or glasses or all sorts of things, you are already a superhuman. And so that's going to be one of the questions, is how do we optimize and how do we get even beyond our native abilities? And this is going to lead to some very significant changes in our health system, generalized to personalized, episodic to continuous, sick care, symptoms-based sick care to healthcare, fee-for-service to incentivizing outcomes, physical, as I said before, to physical plus virtual, opaque to user-friendly, atomized to interoperable data, and most importantly, human to human plus AI. In X years from now, if you go to your doctor and your doctor is acting alone without some kind of AI assistant, it will be malpractice. But if someone says, go see your AI or go on ChatGPT and ChatGPT will cure you, that will also be malpractice. The future doesn't belong to machines alone, doesn't belong to humans alone, but we will continue to coexist and co-evolve with our technologies, as frankly we've done for 1 million years since our ancestors controlled fire. So beyond human health, we're going to need to fundamentally transform agriculture. I know that this is Italy, and nobody loves traditional Italian agriturismo, bespoke agriculture as much as I do. But a couple things that we need to remember. Number one is we have 8 billion people on planet Earth. We are going to 10 billion people on Earth. If everybody on Earth lives like these wonderful agriturismos that you have in Italy, the only way to achieve that goal will be to cut down all of the wild spaces, drain all of our swamps, and destroy the entire planet. And so the only way that we're going to feed comfortably 10 billion people, and people who want to live lives like ours, to have a healthy mix of foods, including animal foods, the only way, two ways that can happen. One is everyone can immediately become a vegetarian, and that will frankly solve most of our problems. Or two, we need to significantly increase agricultural productivity. And we will only be able to do that with the application of science to agriculture. And I know that that will make some people uncomfortable, but I need to remind you that agriculture itself is one of the most aggressive forms of applied biotechnology in human history. Agriculture is biotechnology. We're not applying technology to nature. We're applying technology to other technology so we can do it more efficiently. I know you're having debates in Europe, certainly about GMO crops, which are transgenic crops, but also about the application of tools like CRISPR to edit the genomes of crops within the crops themselves. But we're going to have to, in the mix of things that we have to do, we're going to have to increase agricultural yields. That means greater productivity with fewer inputs of land, water, fertilizer, and energy. And the only way we're going to do that is by thoughtful, sustainable, applied science. And we can also think differently about fertilizers. Fertilizers for the last 100 years, since the invention of the Haber-Bosch method for creating synthetic fertilizers, have been transformative for our species. But they have a lot of waste, a lot of runoff, a lot of energy, and whole new approaches to manipulating the microbiomes that line the roots of plants or in soils to naturally do what fertilizers are doing. I mentioned animal agriculture. 3/4 of all of our agriculture supports animal agriculture. And whether that's grazing lands or growing food to feed animals, but you have to feed a cow 25 calories of plant to get 1 calorie of animal product. And so that's a big conversion. Again, the right answer is we should all become vegetarians, but we're not going to do it, and we're not doing it. As a matter of fact, our consumption of animal products goes up year after year. So there is this whole new field. I know you're all familiar with it because it is absurdly banned in Italy before it even exists, of cell-cultured animal products, growing bio-identical meat products and milk products, not by killing animals, but by having the healthiest animals possible, extracting stem cells, growing them, expanding those cell lines in bioreactors. It's very early in the day in this story, and we'll have big issues of scale and scope and cost, but we have to get started because, again, some people may be uncomfortable with the idea, but if you are, I encourage you to go and visit an industrial animal farm where 3/4 of the animal products we eat globally come from these horrible industrial animal farms. So you may be queasy about a cell-cultured burger, but you'll be more queasy if you visit one of these places. But this isn't just about human health or plants or animals. As I said before, the big story is human-engineered intelligence and re-engineered biology. So what are the other living systems that can be re-engineered? Certainly our modern economies are based on extraction, cutting things down or digging up, but increasingly we can grow natural resources that we need, like this kind of spider silk, which is stronger pound for pound than Kevlar, stretchier than elastic, but it's hard to grow because spiders are cannibals, and so if you put them all together like silkworms, they'll kill each other. But now we have synthetically generated, whether it's E. coli bacteria or genetically altered goats or hamsters or just synthetic creation of spider silk. So it's a whole new field of using synthetic biology to create new industrial materials. Biofuels, the first generation of biofuels was a total bust because we took from food supplies. One of the reasons why ethanol, I think, is a total waste is we're taking from food supplies. So if you take from food supplies, then you just have to use more land to grow more food. But the next generation of biofuels are looking at waste materials and whether these are things that are not eaten as part of our agriculture, or vast blobs of seaweed like we have in the Gulf of Mexico, which result from the fertilizer runoffs down the Mississippi River, and using that as seed stock for biofuels. I could go on and on. One additional example is data storage. We talk about the cloud as if the cloud is up there, but the cloud is our data centers. And that's why we have to build so many data centers. And the data is stored on these magnetic tapes that lasts about 30 to 50 years. And that means that every 2 years we're creating more data than all of history. I don't know what that means. Just kidding. We're creating more data than all of history up to that point. And where are we going to store it? And we have the answer from our own evolution. DNA is 1 million times denser than silicon. Unlike 30 to 50 years, it can last 2 to 5 million years under the right conditions. So all of this is wonderful and exciting, but there's one problem. I can just say it in one word: humans. Humans, we are driven by our same Darwinian drivers of evolution, which Darwin called random mutation and natural selection, and we call diversity and competition. It drives technology forward, and it also pushes us forward, and it creates a lot of challenges. I was a member of the World Health Organization Expert Advisory Committee on Human Genome Editing, which was created after the first 3 CRISPR babies were born in China in 2018 and 2019. Highly unethical. I've called it Nuremberg-style human experimentation. But this is what happened when there was a race to see what could happen. I talked about the COVID-19 vaccines, which are these incredible feats of human ingenuity. They've saved millions and millions of people. We're having a crazy debate in the United States. I was at the center of the debate since early 2020 about the origins of COVID-19, and it is my belief that the most likely origin is a laboratory-related accident in Wuhan, followed by a cover-up. I was the lead witness in the US congressional testimony on this subject. And so I've talked about a really great future and some really big dangers, and what's the difference between those two stories? And the difference between those two stories is us. It's what we all do on every level. The unsexy word is governance, and governance is much bigger than government regulation. It's what we do on every level. It's what we do on our corporate level, on our communal level, national, global, and international. The only way we're going to manage this technology, this very powerful technology, is doing so together. And that's why communities like this are so important. You know what this is, a Seurat painting. Every one of us is a dot in this painting. And every one of us also has a responsibility for the painting as a whole. And the first step in this process, the first step in all of us doing our bit to make sure that our most cherished values guide the application of our most powerful technologies is coming together and figuring out the best way forward. Thank you so much.